Welcome to Next to Madison, a podcast to help you live your best life.
Welcome back to another episode of Next to Madison. I'm your host, Madison Malloy, and on this episode, we are diving into the wine world. Yes, we've had episodes about wine, but this one is very different. We are sitting down with the owner of a very famous vineyard, Grgich Hills Estates, and they have a wonderful wine, and we're really breaking down, I'm asking the hard questions about the tannins. Can wine really make you live longer? We even talk about how women can make you live longer. We've got some funny things going on in there. So it's very educational, where you can actually make better choices about wine and have a different view about wine, the story behind wine, when these winemakers, and the passion and the love and how it's made, and the roots and the vine and the soil. It's just a beautiful, amazing story that makes you appreciate drinking a glass of wine so much more. So this is a very fun episode. I found myself getting kind of lost in her conversation of just imagining myself on this vineyard with all these beautiful vines and these beautiful grapes, and going in and having a glass and the grapes and the cheese and all this good stuff. So it was a very fun episode. So hopefully you will be able to fantasize and get your butt to Grgich Hills Estates out in Napa, or definitely check them out in a local store or at a restaurant. So we will be right back with Violet, the owner of Grgich Hills Estates.
Hey, it's Madison Malloy. Just wanted to remind you to make sure you grab a copy of my book, Time to Lighten the Fuck Up. It is a great, funny self-help book that is going to help you get out of your own way. I have already helped thousands and thousands of people, and they are on their way to living their dream life, and I want every listener to be able to live their dream life as well. So grab a copy of the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or even the audiobook on Audible. Now back to the show.
All right, we are back with our amazing guests on this episode, where we are diving into the world of wine. It's going to be a fun and exciting episode. Sitting with me as the guest, we have Violet Grgich, who is the president of Grgich Hills Estates, which is one of the most famous vineyards in Napa Valley. And Napa Valley would not be Napa Valley without her father, and she's going to tell us all about that. So welcome to the show, Violet. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Madison.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Okay, so because I just opened up with that teaser, tell us about your dad and how he made Napa what it is.
Well, it's a long story because he lived to be over 100 years old, which is pretty amazing. But yeah, he was born in Croatia. Croatia used to be part of Yugoslavia. That's when he was born, it was Yugoslavia and a communist country, but he grew up in a very small, very poor village along with 10 brothers and sisters. He was the youngest of 11 children. And believe it or not, that's actually a small family in the village. Usually it was about 16. His dad went away to war, so that was 5 years of not having kids. But he grew up stomping grapes and making wine. His parents used to throw all the kids in the grape vat where they would jump up and down and have a great time. And he just fell in love with wine. He also started drinking wine, I guess, at the age of 2 or 3, when he was weaned from breast milk to wine. And but actually, nobody drank wine straight. They had wine that was mixed with water, because they knew that if they actually drank the water from the village, it would actually make them sick. So the wine actually sterilized the water, made it safe to drink, and made it a lot more fun to, do all the stuff you do around a farm. So,
oh, that's so cool. Okay, and then fast forward, he obviously had a passion for wine, basically growing up on it.
Mm-hmm. Huge passion for wine. He ended up studying, and his professor had gone to UC Berkeley on sabbatical for a year. And when he came back, he told my dad that in America, you could achieve your dreams, plus Napa Valley is paradise. So he essentially went to, he escaped communism. He went through Germany. He was supposed to be a lumberjack. That's how he got his visa to Canada. Came to Napa, worked with some incredibly famous winemakers. And then he was hired by a small winery called Chateau Montelena to make Cabernet. My dad had actually made the Cabernet that made Robert Mondavi famous. And so they wanted to snag my dad. And when he put the business plan in front of them and they found out, well, they can't start making money for at least 6 or 7 years because Cabernet just takes a long time to make. They went, oh my God, we need cash flow. So we made a Chardonnay, and Chardonnay is the great white wine of Burgundy. And that was taken to this Paris tasting called now the Judgment of Paris, organized by Stephen Spurrier. He took literally some of these upstart California, mostly Napa Valley, and pitted them against literally the best French white Burgundies and red Bordeaux. And of course, got all professional French judges. And this tasting was blind. And they picked the number one wine of the tasting was my dad's Chateau Montelena Chardonnay 73. And they were horrified. They thought it was French. So this single-handedly put Napa Valley on the map. And of course, had a lot of people wanting to hire my dad. So that's how we founded Grgich Hills in 1977. Found a great partner by the name of Austin Hills from the Hills Brothers Coffee family. And we broke grounds on July 4th of 1977. So that's how the winery itself started. And again, Chardonnays won world tasting. And so my dad became known as the king of Chardonnay and literally turned Chardonnay into the popular wine that it is today.
Well, your dad is responsible for several of my hangovers.
Oh my gosh. I didn't think our wine gave any hangovers.
Well, I probably wasn't drinking your wine. I was just drinking a Chardonnay. I was probably I was drinking the cheap shit. You have the good shit.
Yeah, we got good stuff. So definitely. So
well, that is so great. So real quick, speaking of price, I have I have a friend who is a big wine collector, and sometimes he'll bring out a bottle and it's like $2,000. I'm like, that's the dumbest waste of money I have ever heard in my life. Like, let me sell you a grain of sand. Like, this is great. But he's like, you don't understand. And I don't. So educate us on how the price is determined for these wines.
It's it's really very complex, but it's basically as much as you can get for it. And the wine is actually really expensive to make. If you have to buy grapes these days, they're $8,000 to $12,000 a ton. It's really expensive, and the winemaking process itself, French oak is expensive, but all of those things, wine is truly an art form. And, like anything else, if you, listen to a style of music you've never heard before, you might go, I don't understand that. What makes sense? But the more you experience it, the more you can get the complexities and the nuances. It's like, why Taylor Swift, has people that are called Swifties, and because, they love her. Yeah. And, but it's that complexity and also rarity. If there's a particular vineyard, especially if it's really old, and there's a particular block from that vineyard, that's scarcity and rarity. And then if it's judged really highly by critics, then they can, there's wine bottles that cost thousands of dollars. So would I pay that much for one? I've got my own wine.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm very happy with my own wine. But I think for everything else, it's what the market will bear. If you can get away with charging a lot of people do. But you have to make your costs. You have to make sure you can employ your staff. Yeah. But again, it's sort of like, who are my competitors? How do we stack up to them? What style is it? What are they getting for it? So, all these factors sort of come into play.
Interesting.
It's almost like the magic 8-ball in a way.
Yeah, totally. So when you said they buy their grapes, are grapes not growing as fruitfully as they used to?
They do, but the cost of grapes has gone up. Like, everything's gone up. Like, I'm sure every single little thing you buy is now more expensive than it used to be. Cost of grapes goes up, but we're actually fairly reasonably priced, especially when you see the wines that are available in stores and restaurants. We have some that are much more expensive that are only at the winery, but in terms of, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. When you get to be a certain age, you'll figure this out when you get to be older. What was I just talking about?
You were talking about the price, and then you said the restaurants have the cheaper.
Oh, the price
have a more, or not cheaper, but a less expensive than the vineyard.
Right. And so, gosh darn, I'm so sorry about that. Somebody walked by, and I went,
yeah, you're like, wait a second, who is it? Okay, so let's get back to this question. Do you guys grow grapes on your
Yes,
estate?
that's what it is. So
Okay.
in terms of our wines are tend to be fairly reasonably priced, the wines that you see out in the stores, because we are 100% estate grown. And
Oh,
that means
love it.
that we own all of our own grapes. We control them from start to finish. And because grapes are the single most important thing when it comes to making wine, because that's where it comes from, we want to make sure we have the very best quality. And we also want to make sure that we do as little as possible to the grapes once they come into the winery in order to preserve all of those amazing flavors and amazing aromas. Because you can do a lot of monkeying around with wines, and a lot of wineries do that. But we believe an approach that is 100% natural. So as little intervention as possible so that we can preserve all of that great stuff that grows in the vineyard. And that's why our farming is so important.
I love it. So when you don't have people stomping on your grapes with their bare feet, do you guys use machines?
Yes, actually, it's really funny. My dad grew up stomping grapes, and he used to tell all the ladies, please come up and stomp grapes at the winery. One lady actually showed up and said, I'm here ready to stomp. So we had to start grape stomping years ago, but we wanted to actually use that juice so that nothing went to waste. But the government didn't allow us because people's feet touched it.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of gross.
But it's the idea, but that's how people used to do it. And nothing that can harm humans can survive wine. That's one of the reasons wine is such a healthy beverage, because that's why you put the wine in the well water, the country well water, to sterilize it, to kill all the bacteria. So it's actually a very.
So you're telling me my friend that drinks a lot of wine is not actually affecting her health?
Well, if you drink too much of anything, it's actually going to affect your health.
True.
But my dad would always joke that, the secret to his longevity and great health, by the way, was wine and woman.
Wine.
In his Croatian accent. And he lived to be over 100. And I remember last year, the world's oldest person died at the age of 118. And she credited her longevity with every day drinking a glass of wine and having chocolate. So it's all about balance.
Yeah, they do say what is it, resveratrol in the red grapes. So maybe that is it. I guess everything in moderation. So he had a lot of wine. How many women did he have?
Well, I know he made every woman feel like she was the most important person in the world, but he was only married once to my mom. So.
Okay. And then he was just a ladies' man. Good for him.
He is, as you say, a European gentleman. So.
Yeah. In America, we're like, what a dog. But
yeah.
We're like, oh, what a gentleman. I love that. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So he had lots of wine and lots of women and wine. I guess that's the longevity. The problem is I'm not going to have longevity because I can only do wine and not women.
Oh, well, that's okay.
So what will be my secret?
I would say chocolate. Maybe.
Yeah, men will actually shorten your life, probably. The headaches they put you through. Yeah. So wine and chocolate for the ladies, and for men, women and wine.
That's right.
Okay. I love that. Oh, that's so fun. So let's talk about the ingredient that comes up that I hate, which is why I don't, or anyone in my family, we claim we're allergic because it gives us really bad headaches, to tannin. So we don't drink red wine because it's horrible. So what are tannins, and how do you get rid of them, and how do you prevent that hangover, that red wine hangover?
Well, I think, as doctors have said, every person's headache is so different, and headaches can be from so many complicated reasons. Tannin is actually naturally occurring. It's the kind of thing that, let's say, when you bite into a green banana, it makes your mouth pucker and dry out. That's tannin. And it's found in many different fruits. It's found in oak barrels. So anything that, especially if you get a little bit of tannin from the oak, but mostly it's from the skins of the grapes. And red wine has tannin because red wine is fermented on the skins. And that's how you get the red color. Whereas white wine is usually pressed right away So you don't get that extended fermentation. Fermentation is like simmering. This is this chemical reaction. So when you simmer, you actually extract a lot from the skins. But if you press it right away, nope. And that's how a lot of rosé is made. You take red grapes and you press them right away, and they get a little bit of that pink color, but not as much. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so interesting. And then how do they determine the percent? I don't know much about alcohol, so sorry if these questions seem really dumb.
Okay.
How do they determine the level of alcohol in a glass?
So that is determined by sugar when you pick the grapes. When you pick the grapes, there's a certain percentage of sugar. It's measured by degrees Brix. And then if you've got, say, like 23.5%, 23.5 Brix sugar, you're going to get about 13.5, 14% wine, alcohol. And depending on whether any sugar is actually left, a lot of wines have residual sugar, which is essentially the sugar that's left that doesn't ferment away. With some wines, it's obvious. With other wines, it's not so obvious. And oftentimes a wine can be completely dry, but be really fruity. So people might think there's a bit of sugar in it, but it's not. But yeah.
So I had no idea the sugar, because that's why people say, yeah, wine will make you fat, because there is so much sugar in it. But I didn't realize that the sugar was what equated to the higher alcohol content.
Yeah, well, it equates to alcohol. So basically, fermentation is a process that yeast eats the sugar and then produces alcohol and heat, as well as carbon dioxide. So that's where you get that bubbling stuff, that fermentation. Something started to go, then it's that bubbly, so that's the carbon dioxide. But yeah, the sugar gets converted to alcohol, so it has less and less in sugar. So it's actually, in wine, it's going to be the alcohol more than the sugar that actually has calories.
Interesting.
I wouldn't say it makes you fat. I would say, I'm thinking about most people I know who regularly enjoy wine. They tend to be really nice and slim. So I would say that probably has a slimming effect. Again.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, right. And you've got a marketing thing behind you. I'm just like, I've seen this one guy that spends too much money on wine. I'm like, I wonder if he drank 5 less days a week, if he would be skinnier. I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to everything in moderation.
Right.
Absolutely. Cows only eat leafy greens, and they're huge. So you can get chunky on anything.
Again, healthy lifestyle, eat the right ingredients. The less processed, the better. The more natural, the better. And yeah, be moderate. It's those bag of chips that kill everybody every time.
Exactly. Yes, and the candy that they're picking up. So, how much wine did your dad drink to live so long? A day?
Maybe a glass or two.
Oh, okay. So that was
sometimes more, sometimes less, but yeah.
Good for him.
It's not a lot.
Yeah, it was just enough and that's the thing too, is sometimes it's just having that one glass of wine to kind of take the edge off the day. Maybe I should start doing that. Maybe that's what
Why not? You'll live longer.
Well, exactly. I was thinking I'd live longer because I'm like, I haven't drank in 3 weeks. But maybe that's why I'm stressed out. Who knows? Everything.
Wine definitely helps. So I remember actually, I think it was, I'd given birth and, this lactation thing, and it wasn't coming. And finally my doctor said, just have a beer. And I'm like, oh, okay. So apparently there's an ingredient in beer that helps relax people as well. So it seemed to work.
Yeah, that works. I like it. Okay.
Yeah. But I imagine the same with wine. So.
Okay. Well, good. So tell us about, what is this organic soil that you guys have?
So we farm organically. We're certified regenerative organic, and that is actually the highest level of farming that there is, because organic is really about, what you don't put and what you don't do. Whereas regenerative organic is a whole way of actually treating the soil as a living entity and creating soil structure, which sounds really sort of weird to people who aren't farmers, but I have to tell you, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. When you don't, so part of the tenets is not tilling the soil. So you go through a lot of vineyards, you'll see that the ground is sort of dug up and tilled. Well, that actually breaks the soil structure. And a lot of people think that, well, gosh, if I till my soil, then I'll allow, more water to, I can aerate the soil, which is great for the roots, but and also we can get more, water into them. But that's actually not true. Because the soil, you're breaking up the structure, so it's becoming harder, essentially, and it also does not absorb water. We found this out with several years ago. We had one of those things called an atmospheric river. So it comes through and dumps a ton of water in one day. So this was about, I think, 8 inches of water in one day actually falling. And my cousin is out in the vineyard. He is our winemaker and he's responsible for our vineyards as well. And he took this video, and in our vineyard, there's no tilling of the soil. So you see a little short stubble of cover crop. There's no water. And you pan very quickly when maybe, 10, 15 feet away is a road that divides us between ourselves and our neighbor. And the neighbor's vineyard, the neighbor who tills, and there's water sitting in the road, sitting in their vineyards, it's flooded. Whereas our soil absorbed all of that water. And being in California, people are really, very conscious. We've gone through a lot of droughts, and that ability for the soil to actually act like a sponge and absorb water is huge. So anyway, and it's very natural. I mean, this is like, a lot of vineyards are pulled up in Napa Valley between 15 and 25 years old. That's considered the life of the vine. But what happens is that it's like people, if you have a kid and your kid gets to be 15 or 20 years old and they suddenly die, well, that's not right. Vines have the same lifespan as a human being. We've got some vines that are over 130 years old. We have other vines that are over 60 years old. And the longer they produce, the better quality they produce. The grapes become more and more complex. So they're like, a lot of art goes for millions of dollars. And you might look at a piece of art, especially something that's really modern and abstract, and go, why would anybody pay that much for that? Again, it's how much people want to pay for it. But the same thing with that level of complexity. So old vines produce more complex grapes, which produce more complex and interesting wine. So it's like with every sip, it's like you're taking a journey, or reading a poem. It takes you in this way, and it is literally like you're going along, you're seeing this, you're seeing that, oh, and then you're seeing that, oh, then you see that and experience that. That's what having a sip of an incredibly fine wine does. It is literally like taking a journey with every sip, and every sip will be different. It's really amazing. And that's why people will pay thousands of dollars for bottles that they get that experience. And some people just want it as an investment. Some people will buy those wines early and they'll save them, then they'll sell them and make money.
So how long, when a wine is bottled, how long is it actually good for?
That depends entirely on the wine itself. So a lot of people say white wines can't age. Well, that is not true. White wines can age if they're properly made and properly balanced. They have to have good acid. They have to have good structure. If they have good structure, they can last for a heck of a long time. They're a little more sensitive because they don't have the tannin. Tannin protects red wines in terms of ageability. So they're a little tougher when it comes to temperature, being moved around. But last year when my dad was 100, we had this tasting of wines starting with the 1965 Grgich Vineyards Private Reserve Cabernet. And the first white wine that we tried was a 1969 Chardonnay. And that was a Mondavi wine. And they were like, I don't know, this is going to be maybe embarrassing. It was stunning. It was still alive. It had life. It had beautiful crispness. It was still, an older wine. So it had that, sort of like older paintings, very old paintings get like, the years sort of cover them and give them a bit of a blur. But wow, it was amazing. So wines that are made well and have great structure can last. A lot of wines are made a lot of wines are made just to drink right now. And a lot of people like wines that are really jammy and really fruity. So those will be picked later. So there's less acid, more sugar, and they tend to not have as much structure because when you get to a certain point, the acid starts to decrease. And if you don't have enough acid, then you're not going to have that wonderful balance. So
That's so interesting. Yeah, because I was like, I wonder how long. Because my parents, they don't really drink, but they always have a Christmas party, and everyone brings wine. And so they have boxes and boxes of wine. And my dad's like, I don't even know what the heck this crap is. So they bought like wine racks to put in the basement because there's I'm talking thousands of bottles. Like, you need to hire a wine expert to come in here and tell you like what they're valued at and put the valuable ones away, and that'll last. And then the crap, put that off to a box and bring those to the parties you go to and just recycle. Because my dad would pick up a $5,000 bottle of wine and be like, oh, here you go. Like, he wouldn't know.
Yep.
So it's so funny. So like, but I'm telling you, it's crazy. Like, every time I'll go to like, if I'm home and I'm going to an event, my dad was like, go down to the basement, help us get rid of that wine. I'm talking thousands.
That's amazing.
Thousands. I should have you come out there.
Well, I would he should contact like a fine wine shop and just have somebody there come and take a look, because they're going to really have even more knowledge about some obscure wines I might not necessarily know about, and vintages.
Yes.
They can give you a great evaluation. They can say, hey, none of this is very good, or, oh, you've got some really nice ones in there. Take care of those.
Well, exactly. But my dad's so funny because he says, you know, when people show up to a party with a really expensive bottle of wine, they're going to tell you about it. So usually I'll put that one off to the side. So they're not just going to drop it on the table and keep going.
Right.
I mean, someone with like actually a shit ton of money would, but like most people are like, you know, this year, for example, one of our friends came with another friend and bought them a really nice bottle of wine. And like, I think I heard the price of this bottle 10 times. And I'm like, we get it. Like, it's a $300 bottle of wine. That was very nice of him. Like, why does this keep? But my dad was like, okay, well, I'm going to put this off to the side. In fact, I'll stick it in my room so I know that I can use it for a special occasion.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it was too funny. And then he's got a cousin who's like, you know, spends stupid money on wines. And we're like, okay. So my dad always says, I get a taste. So when they have them over, that's when they open the nice bottle of wine.
Right. And you know, there might be a wine that's calling your name, because definitely people have different tastes. You know, some people love jalapenos. Some people can't tolerate them. Some people love cabbage. Some people hate cabbage. Same thing with wine. Somebody can tell you, oh, this is a really good bottle. Well, it might be, but you might not necessarily like it. And there's nothing wrong with that, because your taste buds are unique to you. Yes. And everybody will, you know, try wine. They'll get different things out of it. There's no, you know, hard and fast rule as to, you know, whether somebody's going to like it. I mean, a lot of things that, a lot of people don't know what corky or corkiness actually means in let's say a bad bottle of wine. A lot of people will just try a wine at a restaurant and they don't like it, so they think it's bad. That's not necessarily the case. When a wine is actually corky, it actually does have this, I wouldn't say ingredient, this what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, the cork can contain TCA, which is a chemical that is sort of a byproduct of, anyway, what happens is that if that can get into the wine can taste a little funky. It can taste sometimes really moldy, or sometimes it's so subtle that it doesn't really give anything bad, but it just sort of sucks the flavor and life out of it, which is really sort of weird as well. And that's the kind of thing that you can send your wine back at a restaurant and say, hey, but most people can't detect it. A lot of people just have no idea what it is. So in the very few occasions that I've ever gotten one of those at an event, I made people try them side by side. And especially if it's really subtle, and they'll go, oh, I can taste the difference. Some people can't. In fact, I remember one gal said, I like the bad one better. I'm like, if that's the case, then you're in heaven because
So
then you
wait,
don't have to.
I guess I didn't understand. Like, is it because some of the cork leaks into the wine?
There's a chemical in the cork. I don't want to say chemical. I mean chemical like an ingredient, like and yes, it can leach into the wine because you want to stir wine. You want to keep the cork wet because otherwise the wet cork will dry out and then it'll crumble. So the cork,
Yes.
cork is actually perfect for wine because it lets the wine breathe. It lets in these microscopic amounts of oxygen that actually help the wine age well and mature. If it lets in too much oxygen, then the wine will become oxidized. So oxidation is like when you cut an apple in half and then it starts turning brown. That brown is oxidation. Same thing will happen with your wines. So again, too much oxygen, not good. Very tiny little bits, actually very good for it. So that's why the cork is such a perfect closure for wine. But again, you'll have some, and when they're cleaned, it's a byproduct. Sometimes when they're cleaned, something stays behind. It doesn't happen that often usually, but I've definitely found that most people don't know what it tastes or smells like and have a hard time knowing, like, when is it okay to return a wine at a restaurant? And it's not just because you don't like the style. It's about, is there something really wrong with the wine? Has it turned totally brown? Is it, corky? But again, people's tastes are totally different. And my dad always used to say that, when people asked him, well, how can you tell a great wine? He says, well, when the wine goes down your throat and it says, more.
Oh my God, your dad sounded so cute.
My dad's adorable. But that's when that's the wine. If you want more, what's the wine, like if you're not even thinking about it, what's the wine that disappears from your glass? That's the wine.
Yeah.
And that's for anybody, I think, the definition of a great wine.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys obviously make the wine there. So are all the bottles and labels shipped in and then everything's bottled right at the vineyard?
Yep.
And then
so we
shipped out?
crush, we ferment. Mhm.
Wow. Okay. So you got a label printer and everything there, and it's just a whole.
Well, we don't print our labels. We have a professional do that. But yes, we buy things, we have them printed, we buy labels, we buy corks, we buy bottles. So anything that goes into that kind of thing, we buy and then bottle here at the winery.
That's great. And then you ship them out to are you selling all over the world? Oh my gosh, isn't that so great?
Yeah.
That is. So are you guys in the majority of all alcohol wine stores?
We should be. We're actually a medium-sized winery, so we're not absolutely everywhere, but we're in the finest wine shops. But we also sell to grocery stores that have fine wine because that's where people want to buy their wine. It's a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We like to make sure our wines are where our customers are.
I love that. Okay, and then before we wrap up, you are cultivating peace through wine. Can you explain more about that?
Yes, peace through agriculture, essentially. But I would always say that I love selling something that makes people happy and brings them together.
Yeah.
If you think about sharing a glass of wine at the table, so we're Croatian. We're definitely a Mediterranean culture. The idea is, you have your main meal in the middle of the day, but it's not about the ingredients. It's about the fact that you're sharing your meal with your family and your friends, and you're taking a lot of time to do it. So that's that friendship, and peace comes through friendship. But people who don't know each other, they go out, they try wine, they share it. It brings joy and happiness. So one of the things that we've done is, as I mentioned, we're regenerative organic certified. This farming method is the highest method of farming. And the more people can do it, the more likely we all are to help reverse climate change because it stores the highest level of carbon dioxide in the earth. And so, again, we're on a mission to sort of tell everybody about this. It's fabulous. Anybody can do it. The more big agriculture does it, the better it will be for the planet. But we also started working with an organization called Roots of Peace many years ago. and
She was on our podcast, Heidi.
Yes, Heidi
Yeah.
Kuhn. And she basically takes land that in war-torn countries that's full of mines, removes the mines, and then brings agriculture back. One of the things that I don't think talks about as much as she should, is the fact that they then literally employ locals and they teach them how to farm. They teach them how to farm organically, regeneratively. They teach them how to build better storage facilities, how to better package their products. They connect them with global buyers. So that's a way, without food, you can't have peace. If people are starving, you have war. And so for us to be able to share this, throughout the world, is something that we feel will bring peace. My parents grew up during World War II. And so we've got a lot of war going on in the world today. And people need to eat. And there's more and more people in the world. We actually started a festival called Festival of the Bells. And the idea was to bring together global leaders in agriculture, in food and food production, and educate people, and not just educate, but celebrate. And so the idea is the last 2 years, we raised money for Roots of Peace through auction items and Fund a Need, which was wonderful. But that idea of educating people and spreading the word about what a difference they personally can make, and how that can help bring peace between people and through the world.
I love that. What a great story. What a great mission. For sure. So can people come and visit the vineyard and do wine tasting?
Absolutely.
There in Napa?
Absolutely. We have all kinds of different tasting experiences. We prefer reservations. You can make reservations online, but we also accept walk-ins. If somebody wants to stop by and do an elaborate tasting and we have room, absolutely. Or just stop by to have a glass of wine and enjoy the wonderful vineyard surroundings here in Napa Valley. It's absolutely gorgeous. And we're very down to earth. We're Croatian, so we are known for our hospitality, and love to welcome people here.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so tell us where people can find you, like plug your website, where they can follow you, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So our website is grgich.com, grgich.com. And on our website, we are on social media. I think we're at, I don't do social media, so I don't know what these hashtag things are, but I think it's like /Grgich Hills. So yeah, if you just look for Grgich Hills, you'll find us. They're pretty easy to find. And our label is very recognizable. It's a beautiful bottle with a great, I'm going to shine a big one right here. I can show you.
And oh my gosh, I love that huge. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, look at that bottle.
It's great. This one is not filled with wine, but we do have this size that is filled with wine. That's what you call for a big party.
So, but why would somebody want to have that? Like, I would be nervous to pour that. Like, you have to have a big muscle person.
Yeah, having a big muscle person would help. That's a 3-liter. They have magnums, which are half that size. Those are twice the size of a regular wine bottle. So,
do they have any of those levers where like you could put it in a wine thing where you kind of stand up and then you put the glass under and then you just kind of lift it? And it just kind of
I think they call it a wine bottle cradle. It's like a cradle.
Oh, cool. Okay, so it makes it a little bit, because I was like, I don't think I could pick that up and pour.
It's great exercise. The bottle.
This is true. This is true. I was like, gotta get stronger so I can get those magnums up, right?
That's right. That's right.
Well, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for educating myself and the listeners about wine, because it's always so interesting, like just the story. And that's why I think wine is so special, unlike a lot of other alcohols, is that there's such heart and family and soul and passion behind it. You don't hear that as much with, vodkas or beers or anything like that.
Not as much. Really, I mean, you have to, it's not an easy business. And, people think we sit around and drink wine and eat good food all the time. It's not the case. You have to have a lot of love and passion, not just for wine, for farming, as well as for people.
Yes.
And that's something that's super important to us.
Amen. I love that. Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate you, Violet, coming on the show. And thank you to everyone who's listening, wherever you are. We'll see you next time to find out who's next.
Hey, your host here, Madison Malloy. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms, and please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@nexttomadison.com. I thank you again for listening. Bye.